Hi there, Sienna owners. Today on your 2008 Toyota Sienna, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Derale's auxiliary transmission cooler. Now this is what our transmission cooler looks like when it's installed. It comes with the hardware you need to mount it directly to the condenser here at the front, and this way you're going to get optimal airflow right through the cooler, through your condenser, as well as your radiator. If you're using your vehicle to haul some larger items, it can put extra stress on your transmission, and that stress can cause excessive heat to build up. Adding an additional transmission cooler like this can help lower your temperatures back down to their normal operating temperature. So when you're hauling anything heavy, you don't have to worry about the transmission potentially damaging itself from overheating itself. And when our cooler's on here, when we're just driving normally, a little bit of additional cooling isn't going to cause any negative effects. It's just only going to help keep our fluid at that normal operating temperature. It easily installs in line with your return line for your transmission. And it comes with all the clamps and hoses you'll need to get it installed. Now that we've gone over some of the features, why don't you follow along with me here, and we'll show you how to get it hooked up on your Sienna. We'll begin our installation here at the front by determining where we're going to mount our cooler, and also determining which is our return line from our existing cooler back to the transmission. The return line from the transmission is going to be this hose located here. If you're curious how you could determine this yourself at home, the easiest way to do it is just to start your vehicle, and these lines are going to heat up. This line here is your return, and this is the supply. And you can check that by just using a laser thermometer or feeling it with your hand, but they do get quite hot, so to ensure you don't burn yourself, a laser thermometer works great. And just measure the temperature on your two hoses going to your cooler. The hotter one is going to be the supply to it, and the colder one's going to be the return because it's already been cooled down. We checked that, and it's going to be this one here. Now, we've already done the work for you, but if you want to verify this yourself, or maybe you have multiple vehicles you're debating putting a transmission cooler on, you can get a laser thermometer here at eTrailer.com, so you can check that yourself. Next, we're going to go ahead and remove the pins here at the top so we can pull this top piece back and see how much room we have to work with underneath to get our cooler mounted up, because we want to get good airflow across the cooler. And if we were to put it right in front of our existing condenser and radiator, that's an ideal location because air can blow right through it and also through those components. And we know we have good airflow through this direction because those other components also require good airflow. Now that we've got all of those removed, this can come back. We don't want to go crazy with it, but you can see we can peel it back, and we can see down in there now. So we can more easily work, and there's plenty of room in there to get our cooler in. On each corner, when we peel this back, there's going to be a little bolt here. We can take this out with a 10mm socket. You could also use a wrench. And we're going to go ahead and do this on the other side as well. Now that you've got that removed, we can take our piece here and just pop it off of these clips, working our way around. They can be a little tricky. You may need your flat-bladed screwdriver to work them off of there. But once you get them popped loose, we can set this aside. Now we've got plenty of room to work. We can now take our cooler. We're going to figure out how we're going to get it mounted there, and also we're going to figure out the length that we need our hose to be that comes included with it. I do recommend using the box when you're working with the cooler. It's a good place to set it on so you don't accidentally puncture anything on it. And we're going to use a little bit of silicone spray on our cooler on each of the ends here. That's just going to make the hose slip on a little bit easier. We're going to take our hose now, and we're going to slide one end on. And we don't need to go crazy all the way down with it yet because we're trying to determine the length that we need right now. So if we need to pull it back off for any reason, we just need to get it on there some, just so we can determine that length. So we've got it on there enough till we can figure out the length we're going to need for our hoses. It's going to mount down in this location. So we're just going to gently set it right in front of our condenser there. We're just going to pass our hoses right through this little grommet right here. And then we can reach around the other side. And we're just going to gently start feeding the hose around. So it looks like we've got plenty of length on our hose here to get to where we need to go. We're going to be connecting, this is that same one that we pointed out at top. If we just follow the line down further, there's another connection point right here. So this is where we can tap into this line. So now that we've got our hoses routed to where we're going to connect them, we can go ahead and get our cooler mounted up. You're going to receive some of these long zip tie like components here in your kit, and these are designed to attach our cooler right to our existing condenser and radiator. So what we need to do is poke the pointy end through first. We're going to be using the lower of the top two holes because we're just trying to make it line up with the fan on the other side, because that way we can access it through the fan shroud. Once you've got it slid through there, there are foam pieces that come in your kit. You can go ahead and peel the backing off of those. We're going to put the sticky side towards our cooler, and we're going to slide this guy down here, and this is going to ensure we've got a nice little air gap between our cooler and our condenser. We're going to go ahead and repeat this for the one on the other side and two on the bottoms. So that way we've got these here, because if you start feeding them through, it's difficult to get the foam pads and stuff in place. So now that we've got all those fed through, I'm just going to pull them back just some so we don't have too much in our way when we're getting this in position. I'm going to go ahead and kind of line it up where we want it. And once you've got your kind of your spot picked out where you want it here, we're trying to go close to the edge. We don't want to go all the way up to the edge because our fan shroud doesn't on the other side, and we're trying to see these when we poke them through. So now that we've got the relative location, this is going to poke between the fins on your cooler. So just gently work it through. If you feel any major resistance, you want to just stop, just double check yourself. Because it is going to be, there's going to be a little bit of resistance, but it shouldn't be too hard to just slide it on through. I'm just kind of gently working it through. And the other end came through right there. And on this side, we're just going to place this little quick lock. It's kind of like, works just like a zip tie. When you put it on here, it zips it down and holds it in place. Before I go ahead and slide this on here though, I'm going to work the rest of my cables through because I want to make sure I can access each one before we commit and lock this down. Before we cinch these down, it's a little bit easier to get our clamps on here while this is still loose. So we've got those slid through, get your hose clamp slid on. It doesn't need to be all the way on there. We just need to be past the bump, which you can feel with your hand right there. And we need to have the bump to be on one side of our clamp and a little bit of excess hose on the other side to ensure that it gets a good grip, just like this. You also want to put your hose clamp nut on the outside so it doesn't press against your condenser. And if you fully unscrew it, it'll open up like it did there. That's how I was able to slide it around this. And then when we tighten it back down, it just keeps it in place. Additionally, this little excess here, we're going to fold this back and over just because we don't want anything poking towards this side. We're going to do the bottom hose now, and then we can get our cooler cinched down and attached. Now we've got our hoses and everything finished on the cooler side. We can put these on. It just kind of slides over, and you're just going to push it down on there. It just kind of pulls it tight, just like a zip tie. We need to make sure we get it all the way down, because we need to cut off this excess so our fan doesn't hit it. It's a little hard to see just because you really got to get up in there. And there we go. So that one's flush up against the inside. It's also flushed up against our cooler here. We put those foam pads on it so we can get just a little bit of compression to ensure that it keeps it from vibrating and getting loose. And now we'll just go down with a pair of cutters and cut off our excess. We'll then repeat this for the 3 remaining fasteners. Now that you've got all of your fasteners trimmed off so they're flush, you want to just spin your fan by hand real quick and make sure you don't hear any ticking or noise and it's not catching on anything, that you've got them properly trimmed. Now that we've got everything else attached, we can start hooking up our line. And our hose here is going to attach to this return line right here. So we're going to go ahead and remove this clamp from it. If you've got a hose removal tool, that would work great. If you've got a pick, you can use that as well, but you need to be very careful when using a pick because you don't want to stab the hose and cause a leak. But what you can do is you can just kind of get it started, and then you can get some lubricant sprayed down in there, and then if you just kind of work like a screwdriver, or again, if you have a hose tool, that would work the best. Just work it around the outside of your line here, and that's just going to help get that lubrication down in there so you can get this pulled off. Once you've got that lubrication work down in there, your hose should slide off pretty easily. I like to use the needle nose pliers. You can kind of push on each side to push it down. We don't really want to take it quite all the way off. We're just trying to get to that point right there to where it easily slides on and off so we can get to it really quickly when we need to. Now we're going to come back to our hose here. With this one end is going to connect right to where our factory line is here, and the other one's going to connect to the small piece of hose that we're going to remove. So one side needs to be a little longer than the other. We're going to have this side that's coming up here because we can have fluid flow in our cooler in either direction, so it doesn't matter which side of our cooler hose line hooks up here. But we need to make sure we've got enough length to connect to each. So this hose here is going to wrap up. It needs to slide onto there. So we're going to cut it right at about this location here to ensure that it can slide up. I do recommend using a pair of hose cutters so you can get a nice clean square cut. Now that we've got each one of those cut, I'm going to put a little bit of spray lubricant on those, pretty much on everything here just to make it slide together easier. This is a small fitting that does come in your kit. We're not going to be using the actual nut portion, just this metal portion here to connect our two hoses together. So we're just going to slide one end down in there. Our other hose is going to attach to the other end that we're going to pull off right here. And we're trying to do this really quickly. So as soon as we pull this hose off, we want to slide it on here, and we want to slide this one up here to try to lose as little amount of fluid as possible. We can now start putting our clamps back on. You will need to reuse the one hose clamp here, so we slid that one on there. And then the remaining hose clamps, we're just going to put those on. So let's wrap those around there and then tighten them down. And then around our last one, this one here, you may have to use a wrench or ratchet on just due to the angle it's at. So now that we've got everything connected, we can go ahead and start it and check for leaks. And you want to check all your fittings where you made your connections, making sure that you don't see any leaks there. Also down here at your cooler, checking there. And it looks like we're all good. We don't have any leaks from any location. So at this point, you'll want to let your vehicle idle till it warms all the way back up. Check your transmission fluid and top it up. Now, if you're not familiar with how to check your transmission fluid, to fill it and all that, then I do recommend you go to your dealer, as overfilling or anything like that could potentially cause damage, so you don't want to cause any issues. Since we don't have any leaks on our system, we can reinstall our grill here in reverse order of how we removed it. We're now ready to load up our vehicle and hit the road. And that completes our installation of Derale's auxiliary transmission cooler on our 2008 Toyota Sienna.